Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast, where we elevate marketing leaders inside and out. I'm your host, Veronica Rami, master marketer, executive leader, and mentor to ambitious marketing leaders wanting to advance their careers. Each episode is filled with genuine, unscripted conversations with some of the world's top marketing experts, accomplished leaders, and industry trailblazers representing brands, both large and small. Our goal with this podcast and everything we do is to help you master your role, nurture your team, prioritize your well-being, and evolve into an industry-leading rainmaker. This is the Rainmaker Podcast. In this episode, I'm excited to introduce to you a true authority when it comes to market positioning. She's kind of the GOAT. With over 2 decades of experience and expertise, she's uncovered this proprietary framework that helps companies position themselves to radically stand out. Meet April Dunford, the author of the best-selling book called Obviously Awesome: How to Nail Product Positioning So Customers Get It, Buy It, and Love It. Having successfully launched 16 products into the marketplace, she brings a wealth of experience to the crucial topic of repositioning marketing messages for a successful 2024. We start the podcast that way, but then we dive really quickly into her own story and how she was able to position herself as a marketer to the point now that when she goes and speaks or she is conducting these incredible workshops for organizations, you're talking to the tune of 6 figures, not just 4 or 5. She is one of my favorite human beings. She's super generous on this podcast episode. You're going to love it. And may I advise you to take out your pen or pull the car over or stop the treadmill to take as many notes as possible, because she's about to drop some serious wisdom. Without further ado, let's make it rain with April Dunford. April, welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast.
It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I cannot tell you how excited I am to bring your brain to the podcast right now, because this is something that I've been exploring in recent events. We're on the backside of Black Friday, which is like, retail mecca of all the things. And I've been talking a lot with a lot of different small business owners, corporations, rainmakers, marketers all over the frontier, different industries. And something that keeps coming up, or questions that come up around how do we reposition, re-architect our marketing messaging for 2024 with the economy and the inflation combo meal that's happening. It's an election year for us in the States. Like, there's a lot going on. And you are specifically an expert when it comes to the intangibility of what you do. You're a positioning expert for tech companies, which is an intangible, like software, right? You can't really touch it and cuddle with it at night. Where even if we're seeing like record sales on retail side, these are tangible physical goods. When you're a marketer for the intangibility of things, it's a different game. It's a different, I think, level of marketing required. Let's start with what you're seeing in your world, with the type of clients that you serve. What's their mentality going into a new year?
I feel like 2024 right now, to me, if I had to make a prediction, I'd say 2024 is looking like a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah. Okay.
2023 for tech companies in general was not an awesome year. It was a year where we saw a lot of layoffs. There was some contraction. People were talking about how it was really difficult to sell in 2023. But my feeling, and maybe this is just the customers and the companies that I'm talking to, is that the latter part of this quarter feels like a turning point. I'm feeling a bit of optimism about next year. It's not the same across the board. It kind of depends on what segment you're in and who you're selling to.
Yes.
But I think next year is going to be a bit of a mixed bag. I think there's going to be parts of the market that are feeling great and things are good. I think other parts of the market are still going to struggle. But I don't think it's going to be as bad as 2023. I actually think 2024 is looking kind of good.
Well, fingers crossed. My husband sells software for still a privately held, exploding company.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this with him. I'm curious if you were in this conversation with us, because I was talking to him. I'm like, it seems like your company was able to avoid a lot of the bleakness that I've heard from other tech companies.
Yeah.
And his rebuttal, or his 2 cents on that, he's like, well, I look at our software like a necessity more than a nice to have. Like, it's not business intelligence. It's like, you're going to get reviews. You have social media profiles. You have to maintain, like, you have to do something with these assets, and they make it easier for you to do things with these assets. So his argument was like, we're a need, not a want. Do they have constriction in some of the contract negotiation and the terms? And now they're giving out, free months, or that's like, now they get to play with that to help budgets.
Yep.
But for the most part, holistically, they feel like they're a necessity, not a nice to have. Does that resonate with what you're seeing? Because I know you work with more than just one tech company.
So it really depends on the company and what's going on. I'll tell you a couple of things, like sort of general rule in good markets versus bad markets.
Please.
When we think about positioning, in general, we're trying to position around our differentiated value. So what is the value we can enable for a company that no one else can?
Right.
And the rule is, if I'm selling B2B, so software to businesses, if you abstract out value to its most abstract, we really only have two things we can do. We can either help you make money or we can help you save money. That's it. That's all we got. You're either making money or saving money. That's it. And the rule is that in a good economy, everyone's trying to grow. So companies are trying to grow. They're trying to build market share. They're trying to it's go, 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 let's grow. And so a value proposition that's around helping you make money works good in a good economy. When the economy takes a turn, all of a sudden we got a bad economy. Companies aren't growing anymore. And what they're doing is they're really focused on cost cutting. So they're cutting employees, they're cutting back costs, they're cutting back budgets. And so a value proposition around we can help you save money suddenly looks a lot more appealing than a value proposition around we're going to help you make money because we're not actually in grow mode and we're not sure you can actually help us do that. So I've seen a lot of the companies that I've been working with, they have ways to do both. Like they can help you make money or help you save money. But traditionally, they've been really running at this. Here's how we're going to help you grow. And I've seen them do a pivot in their positioning in 2023 to really focus on the value points around helping you save money. Here's how to do more with less. Here's how to make your dollar stretch, all that kind of stuff. So I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
The other thing is that there are parts of the economy that have been great in 2023, like travel and tourism, for example, is back in a way that we're now seeing that stuff come to the level that it was pre-pandemic, finally. So people in travel and tourism that are selling software to folks that are in travel and tourism are like, what are you talking about? The economy's great. Everything's great. Another sector that's really hot right now is cybersecurity. Like we've never seen cybercrime at the levels that it is right now. So if you happen to be selling cybersecurity, this is a life or death kind of thing for companies, to your husband's point. This is not a nice to have. This is if we mess this up, the company doesn't exist anymore. So if you're in cybersecurity right now, you're like, what are you talking about? Time's great. Everything's great.
That's it. So it's really interesting, also wildly validating. So I'm the daughter of two Cuban immigrant parents who owned an air conditioning company in South Florida. And so I remember when this is what my parents told me. So when they literally escaped communism and came to Florida from Cuba, none of their formal education would be transferable. Let's just put it that way, right? And so I remember asking my mom and my dad, I'm like, clearly HVAC is not your greatest passion in life. Why did you choose this? They're like, because everybody needs it.
Because everybody needs it.
Everybody needs a cold house in South Florida. And so that's why they chose it. And to your point, we had an office space and the office was in our garage. Like we've had, certainly there's been an accordion of abundance in the 33 years that they had the company, but period, end of story, it was still a necessity.
Yeah.
So that's wildly validating. The other thing that I was like going through my mind as you were mentioning that. So I mentor a ton of marketers and I also work directly with a lot of CEOs. And so they were coming to me during the Black Friday season, and their Black Fridays weren't going nearly as well as they were hoping for. And one of the things I told them in our big Slack channel was like, you guys need to start pivoting your messaging. Like, for example, there was one client that was like, she helps people get better jobs. And I'm like, you need to change the narrative. Instead of saying, I can help you get a job that on average salaries $80,000. What's a salary? If you had a salary at $80,000, that equals to like $300 a day. You need to switch the messaging from, I can help you get a job that gives you 80 grand a year, to I can help you avoid losing out on $300 a day by not having this job, right? Like the messaging needed to change more to loss aversion and stick marketing versus carrot marketing. So that's really interesting that you brought that up even in your sector with the kind of clients that you maintain.
Yeah. Everybody's, all the companies, they're in cost cutting mode. So they're trying to save money. They're trying to save money. And to spend money, if they go to their board and say, we want to spend some money on XYZ this quarter, the easiest way to do that right now is to go to the board and say, we're going to spend X because it's going to save us Y.
Yeah.
And that's how we do it. But, I mean, if you're trying to sell software right now, that's a pretty easy pitch. Much
Sweet.
easier than going in with a growth message where I think the board is skeptical that there's any growth happening in this market for a lot of companies.
Interesting. I have a question for you because I work with a lot of marketers who have aspirations to leave in-house, do their own thing, focus on their personal brand. As much as you can recall when you did that, like how did you do that? Oh my gosh, like I want to be back in that room with you. How did you do that? How did you position yourself?
I did this the hard way. And if I was starting this again,
yes,
I would give myself better advice than I got, man.
Tell me.
So let me tell you. The first thing is everybody that goes from in-house to consulting, obvious first step is I'll be a fractional CMO.
Yes.
I was CMO in-house, so I'll just go out. I'll do the same job. I'll just do it for a higher rate, fewer hours. That sounds good, right? So instead of working for one company, I'll work for this rotating set of 2 or 3. And it turns out that it's a worse job than the CMO job. Like you took all the things that were bad about the CMO job and amplified them. It's a worse job than the CMO job because what the company wants is a CMO. They hired you to be the CMO.
Because they can't afford one full time. But they'll treat you like it.
They just want a cheap ass CMO. Yes. But the expectations for the job are the same. They want all the CMO things at a third of the price.
Yep.
And so now you have 3 of them that all want that. And there's only one of you, and you're only giving them each like a day or 2 a week, but they want all the things and all the stuff and all the whatever. And you're capped at what you can charge because you're pegged to salary.
Yes.
I'm a fractional CMO, so I'm paying you a fraction of a CMO's salary. You're never going to make more than a CMO's salary for that 1-2 days that you're doing. So you have a worse job for the same money. Yep. It's not good.
Oh my gosh.
I would highly discourage people from doing this. The other thing is that it's very, very hard to differentiate yourself. You're now competing with every other fractional CMO. There's a lot of them. Everybody hates being a CMO. Eventually they get the idea they're going to go out and then they all hang up their shingle. We all look the same. And so I'm out there in the market with, the person who used to be the CMO at Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and I have to compete with all of them. And how am I going to stand out? What's my differentiation? The positioning lady said, what's my differentiated value? Well, kind of don't have it. It's hard to do. So I think so step 1, don't do that. Step 2, I believe that really good consulting is taking on a project that works better with somebody outside than in-house.
Yeah.
So if you can carve off something that you can do for a company that it would actually make more sense for an outside person to do than an inside person, that's generally really good consulting. The other thing is I feel like really good consulting is not like a job. It doesn't go on in perpetuity. It has a beginning and a middle and an end and deliverables. Fractional CMO does not have any of those things. So when I started, I thought, well, it would be fractional CMO, and that was stupid. And then I thought, well, I didn't think I could sell positioning as a thing. So I thought I'll sell the output of positioning, which is messaging. So I'll come in and help you with your messaging. And that didn't work as well as I thought because it actually works better with somebody in-house to build messaging in a lot of ways, unless what we're talking about is copywriting. And there's lots of copywriters, probably too many. How do I differentiate from all the amazing copywriters? And I'm not even a good copywriter, to be honest. I have an engineering degree. You really don't want me writing your copy. So that was no good. So what I had to do was figure out how to package up positioning as an offering that made sense for a company to bring in an outside person. At the beginning, I really thought what I had to do was the work. I would come in and do the positioning for you, and then there would be this deliverable, and it would be the positioning. But where I eventually landed was I have a methodology to do positioning, and it's my job to teach you that
teach it.
and
Yep.
guide you through that, but it is your thing, not my thing. So I'm actually the teacher, the facilitator. I'm not the doer.
Yes.
If you can figure that out in whatever your space is, I think that is very good consulting. So I now make, like again, if we talk about how much I can charge for that,
Yeah,
it's
numbers.
exponentially more than I could if I was fractional CMO
Yeah.
or I'm going to write your messaging for you. So then, we're talking about, well, how many hours and how many whatever. Now I'm doing a thing that there is very little competition to what I do. The company has already attempted to do it in-house and has failed. Generally, that's why they're coming to me. And they need someone to come in from the outside and help unlock this thing to get it done.
Yeah.
And they're willing to pay a lot of money because they're in a lot of pain. They've tried other things. And there's very few people out there in the market that can even talk intelligently about this stuff. So I am a rare hot commodity.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Coming to
you're in
do this
a blue
thing.
ocean, not a red ocean.
That's right.
Hey Rainmakers, it's Veronica, and we'll get back to today's episode. But before that, I have an exciting invitation for all of you aspiring, ambitious marketing leaders. If you are serious about advancing your career in marketing and you're looking for an expert to give you some personal insights, guidance, tips, then I'm going to invite you to schedule a free Pathway to Promotion call with me. This is a special one-on-one call with just you and me to discuss your current roadblocks in your career, your long-term aspirations and ambition, and the next best step for you and your personal promotion. Head to pathwaycall.com or click the link in my show notes to schedule your free Pathway to Promotion call. Now back to today's episode.
Then the last thing is, and this took me a while, and not everybody has the ability to do this, but I did not go out of house until I was late in my career. So I think I was 50 when I decided to stop working in-house and made the switch. The advantage to doing it then was that I was fairly financially secure.
Sure.
I could spend a couple of years messing around trying to figure out what the right model was.
Gosh.
And right from the beginning, I was always very picky about clients. The whole reason I left doing in-house stuff is I was sick of working for jerks.
Tell
So
me
I
about
was
it.
like, if anybody give me even the slightest little whiff of
Yeah, that feel.
jerkiness, I'm not working with you.
Yeah.
So I was always very picky about that. And I think how that's paid off for me now, I've been doing this 8 years or whatever it is. How it's paid off for me now is that my reputation in the market is quite good because I've never had to take on a bad client where we then failed. And so if you check in on the word of mouth on my stuff, it's generally fairly positive. I mean, you're not perfect and you don't know exactly what everybody's saying about you, but I do get an awful lot of business from referrals and people saying, "Oh, you worked with so and so and he loved your work and whatever, and everybody's raving about your work and this is why we're here." So having the discipline to say no to work, which is very hard if you're broke. And the advantage of doing this when you've got a little bit of a nest egg that you're not, money doesn't have to be the main thing for the first couple of years while you're figuring it out, is ultimately going to make you a lot more money later because you'll have the chance to figure your stuff out, not take on clients that are potentially not a good fit for you, not do, and not have this risk of doing too much bad work in the early days while you're still trying to figure out what does good work look like and how do I know how to filter for good clients and all that kind of stuff.
Okay,
So
hold
that's
on.
my
That was just like the greatest
advice.
TED talk of my life. How to position yourself as an extraordinary, one of a kind marketing consultant. Like, I mean, come on, that was some fire.
Yeah, I'll tell you the other thing that really got me was I switched to doing consulting and I didn't have a good network of consultants around me to help me. I wish I did.
Oh.
And so I did a lot of dumb things because I didn't know. And the only consultants I bumped into were struggling. So they were like me, like they didn't have anything to teach me and I didn't have anything to teach them. And we were just
Interesting.
having a pity party at the coffee shop going, everything's so hard. Everything's so hard.
Yeah.
And later in my journey, I met this guy it was at a conference and I was speaking. And so we went to the bar afterwards and I was talking about this offering that I had. And he's been consulting longer than me, and he has a way better consulting business than mine. It's really good. I didn't know that at the time first, right? But we're sitting down, we're having this thing, and I had just raised my rates, and I thought I was charging baller rates. I was charging more than anybody I knew and anybody in my network, whatever. I sit down with this guy, he's a super nice guy. We're having this thing, and he says, "So what do you do?" And I'm explaining the offering, and I said, he said, "Well, how long does that take you to do?" I said, "It's a 2.5 day thing." And he says, "What do you charge?" I said, and I just put my rates up, and I said, "I charge $25,000 for that." And I'm thinking I'm baller. And the look on his face, like he literally made this face that was like he had eaten something sour. He was like, and he goes, "But it's so little. Like, why is it so cheap? Like, that's so valuable. Why would you charge it like that?" Like I was like, "Well, dude, what do you charge?" And then he's explaining his thing, and his thing's like a week-long thing. And he's getting everybody to fly to him because he doesn't like flying.
Mm-hmm.
And he lives in Detroit. Who wants to fly to Detroit?
No
Nobody, but
one.
they all do it because
Yeah.
he's the best at this one little narrow thing. They all fly to him. And he charges like $100,000.
Yep.
And I'm
I
like,
had a feeling that
"Teach
was
me,
coming. 6
Obi-Wan."
figures. Yep. Yep. I knew it was coming.
And so it cracked my mind about what was possible. Up until then, I thought, well, there's only so much money you could charge, and there's only so much you could make. And I had all these kind of limits on my thinking.
Yeah.
But there is something that really unlocks when you meet some people that are doing way better than you, and they're way
Mm-hmm.
beyond you,
Mm-hmm.
that are like, "Well, why wouldn't you just charge $100,000?" And you're like, "Dude, I thought I was killing
Yeah.
it at 25."
Yeah.
So now I'm charging 100. But
Yeah.
it took me a while to get there, and
Yeah.
it wasn't that the customers weren't ready to pay. I wasn't ready to charge it
Yeah.
mentally. I wasn't ready to charge it. And now it's a whole different thing. Like now, I still think it's too cheap.
Well, especially for considering, to your point, not only are you giving them a rocket fuel of revenue when it comes to like a new positioning, but you're training their team to repeat that same process multiple
Exactly.
times. So like there's benefit upon benefit, or what they call marketing benefit extension. Like there's just so much ripple effect of benefit beyond just the immediate win and the conclusion of your 2.5 days that serves them in perpetuity.
And most of these teams have spent months
Yeah. Oh
wrestling
yeah.
with this. They've wasted months and
And
months
money
wrestling with
and
it.
tons.
And we're going to come in and fix it in a week.
Yeah. Well,
But yeah. So that was another
again,
thing.
I want to keep picking your brain. Just one more, because I could just stay here
Sure.
forever. But like, because one of the things that's really, really daunting, or why people like to stay in house, because in house I'm fed. Like I don't have to worry about selling myself.
Yes.
I'm fed. As soon as you jump into any type of consultative work or fractional work or even service, I mean, when I left, I went from corporate to like I'll be a service provider. So I went straight into doing, because it was the easiest thing I could get. I could get somebody to say yes to. And then I've learned my lesson on that one. Like no, but the point is, like, when you first jump out, no one's feeding you. You have to feed yourself, and you're fulfilling. When you left in the more seasoned period of your life, who were your first clients? How did you even get the ball started?
I mean, this is the hard part,
Yeah.
right? When you start and you haven't necessarily prepared for that. It's not like you're
Right.
list building and building your thing. You're too busy
Yes.
heads down trying
Yes.
to make sure you don't get fired.
Yeah. True.
So
True
you're not
that.
thinking about any of these things, and then you come out and you're like, "Oh, Yelp, right? I need a mailing list. I need profile. People need to know who I am." At the beginning, I tapped my network, which was good because I had worked across a series of startups and I'd been doing it for 30 years. The problem with doing that, though, is what everybody really wanted was they just wanted to hire me as their VP marketing.
Yep.
And I was done with that.
Yep.
But it did get me enough work to get started and to start learning what was good work and what was bad work. For the first couple of years, I tapped my network and I did that kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I was starting to write a lot in public. I had a methodology for positioning, and so I was writing about that. So I was posting on social media, and I was slowly building a mailing list, and I was slowly raising my profile. That was okay, but I feel like if that's all I was doing, I would have never broken out beyond that. So the two things that were real game changers for me, the first one was I had always been an okay public speaker. And I was a person that was not afraid of public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided public speaking was a good thing for me to do and I should do that. So I made an effort to build a really good talk. At the beginning, nobody wanted me to speak at their conference because nobody knew who I was. But I convinced some local people in my local, I live in Toronto, and there's these folks that run a meetup in Toronto, and they let me stand on stage, and I crushed it. And then that led to me being invited to be on a couple other stages, and then it got bigger and bigger.
Yep.
And by the end of year 3 or 4, I'm standing on pretty big stages, and a lot of people are learning about me through public speaking.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
So that was step 1 in my mind. So meanwhile, I'm still, and I'm trying to get people to follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and all those things. But I, I think if I had been relying strictly on email and social media, I don't think this would have gone anywhere, to be honest. Public speaking was a game changer for me at the beginning. And then once I had my positioning methodology and I felt quite confident about being able to teach that, I was writing about it a lot. That was becoming very popular. So people were sharing that writing I was doing around. I was getting invited to be on people's podcasts to talk about that. I was doing guest posting on other people's things to talk about that. So I was starting to solidify, and then I'm standing on stages. So I'm starting to be seen as a bit of an authority on this topic. And I decided I was going to write the penultimate blog post about how to do positioning. So I started writing this thing and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I decided, well, this is actually a book.
It's a book. Yep.
And then I got terrible advice on writing books. So I wasted 2 years trying to figure out how to write a book with a traditional publisher and getting an agent, blah, blah, blah. And that didn't work. And then I brought on a co-author and we fooled around for a bit. That didn't work, and a million things. And eventually I self-published, which I should have been doing from the beginning, a book. And then I really went hard on the promo for that book. So I did a ton of public speaking in support of that book. I think I did 300 podcasts the year the book came out.
Oh my gosh.
I did 52 speaking engagements in a
You
year.
were never home.
Oh, it was actually worse than that because it was really condensed into the shoulder seasons, which are our conference season.
Oh, right.
So it was me doing 7 talks a week, May and June, September, October.
Yep.
It was crazy. Anyway, that book was the absolute game changer for me. Absolute game changer. Like that went from, me charging okay rates to me charging really big rates.
Understood.
My pipeline is still, that book is almost 4 years old now. And I'm booked up to next May.
Yeah.
And it's all off the back of that book. And so I do all the other things. I have a newsletter now. I launched a podcast.
Yeah.
I write on LinkedIn once in a while when I'm feeling like it. All that stuff could go away.
Doesn't matter.
And this business would not change.
Yeah.
I say that, I don't know. But I think all that stuff is kind of nice. It's icing on the cake. But the book was a real game changer. Like not just having a book, but a book that struck a chord.
Yeah.
People like it.
Understood.
Sold a lot of copies. And yeah. So that's how it ran for me. Like, does it work like that for everybody? I don't know. But it's funny when I look at the people I know that are consulting at my level, making the kind of money I'm making with the kind of clients I'm working with, they are, without exception, they're public speakers
and
they
authors.
Have a book.
Yep.
They have some kind of intellectual property,
of course,
methodology, something that they're selling and teaching people. They're not actually doing the work, they're teaching the work. That does seem to be the repeating pattern for the folks I know that are solopreneurs, that are, not 6-figure businesses, they're 7-figure businesses, and they're having a good time. Like you meet them and they're happy. Like,
they're on a boat on a lake.
Right. Exactly. They, I don't work again, I'm an old lady. And so I'm working my way to retirement here, but I don't work July and August now. I'm one of those people. I'm like, and I wish I could go back to me when I was at the trough of my career. I have this very specific job. I remember that I consider the trough of my career. I was 15 years into it and I got the worst job of my career. Ugh. Terrible money, terrible bosses, terrible environment. I went out for lunch with my friend and I was so upset. I was like crying in my salad and I was like, 15 years, this is where I'm at. I wish I could come back. I'm like April now could go back to April in a dream
Yeah.
at that moment and say, don't worry, man, your time's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. All of this will be for your good. Promise. I promise.
It'll all be good. You're just gonna, it's not gonna happen till you're 50, man. You're just gonna have to be patient.
But that's also entrepreneurship 101. I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
us make things to serve a previous version of ourselves, to be what we wish we would have had then that we don't have. Certainly, that's definitely been my story. Like in everything that I do, it's the Veronica back then that really was alone in her marketing journey, doing hard things,
Yeah.
having babies, and just trying to have it all
Oh my
without,
gosh. That was the other thing too. Like I get consultants come to me and they'll be like, how do you do it? How do you do it? And I said, okay, step one, your kids have got to grow up a bit because you're
Yes.
not building this business when
Yes.
they're babies and you're tying their
Yes.
shoes and you're
Yeah.
whatever. Like there's no way I'd be running
Yeah.
this business with little
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
My kids are all, they're older, they're in college.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, no, it is. I feel that way. My kids are, I'm in the middles ages. I'm in the 7 and 9, and their social life is more, you know what I mean? Like we're in that
Oh
season
yeah.
where it's starting to change more than just the physicality of littles, you know?
Yeah.
I get on lots of podcasts. I host a lot of podcasts. When I, as a host, have a mountain of notes in front of me, it's a good podcast. It's a good conversation. And I'm like, I
Aw,
can't
thank you.
write fast enough. I'm gonna literally rewatch this episode for my selfish gain, not just even in the pursuit or in the service of others. So it's a phenomenal. We do this fun thing that we save the last question on the podcast where you can ask me whatever you want. And since you too are a podcast host, this should be fun. I don't know what you're going to ask, but you can ask me
Oh, so
whatever.
I ask a question?
Yes, to me. Dun
Hmm.
dun dun.
I would love to know more about podcasting's new for me.
Yeah.
And I've been having a lot of fun with podcasting because it's new. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, I'm an idiot. I know
Yeah.
nothing. And
Yeah,
so
no
it's
pressure.
fun
Yeah.
to do it because it's new. So what I ask all the podcasters that I meet is like, how's it going with this podcast in your business? Is it doing good stuff for your business? Like
Mhm.
how do you know it's working?
Mm-hmm. So, well, it depends on, everybody has a different goal with their podcast, right? I know
Agreed.
people, some of my friends who are podcasts, they want to be in the top 100, the top 20, the top 30. Like they have very specific goals for like visibility because they monetize their audience. And so like you don't monetize until you have a certain, download count, and then you can put the ads and then or be in the, that network or this network or whatever. So
Yep.
and then their whole thing becomes almost like a media company in a way. I never looked at my podcast that way. I actually don't really care how many downloads I have. I've always looked at the podcast as the greatest tool when it comes to fostering relationships.
Hmm.
So like you said, you having a book, you being on stages, you having those beautiful pictures of you on stage and in your, I mean, the most empowered state you could be in, right?
Right.
That's enormously beneficial when it comes to your own personal branding collateral. For me, and I love speaking too, and I love doing all that stuff too, but the podcast is a way that I get to do that from home in, really
Yeah,
comfy clothes with the puppy who's sitting right next to me. Like to me,
totally.
this is a way where I have accessibility to people that otherwise wouldn't give me the time of day because, hey, can I pick your brain? Can we jump on a coffee, call, like a Zoom coffee date? That's a no. Hey, do you want to tell your story on a podcast? It's always a yes. Like it's rarely ever a no. And if it's a no, it's like not now, but contact me in a month from now. Like, so I think the
It is
podcast,
true. It's such an
Mhm.
easy ask. Like you can ask almost anybody and
Anybody,
get them. Like it's
anybody,
anybody.
anybody that you don't know. Like it's just it's a means in which like, do you want to tell your
So
story?
true.
And I think most personal brands have in their own like KPI scorecard of like the number of times they get to express their mission. And so a podcast is an easy yes. Like, yeah, that's a great way for me to get my word out. And also we provide social assets that you can use, and it's a
Yep.
win-win. And so I look at the podcast as a relationship marketing play, as a means in which that I can foster these incredible relationships with new people that I've never had a chance to get to know. And it seems to be working very well for me. Now, what it turns into, it can turn into a form of either just at the most basic level friendship. Like now we're friends and colleagues. If you ever need anything, April, like that you can always reach reach out to me. So there's that reciprocity. In other pursuits, it could be mentorship. It could be, hey, you just conducted a workshop with this company. They're looking for somebody like you. And then it becomes referral partners or power partners, or speaking engagement. It can turn into a number of things depending on where the river takes us.
Good answer.
Well, that's the truth. That's the truth. So, and I think too, like, you're clearly very, very charismatic. And so, like, I think when you also have the personality, a podcast is an easy yes. And then what we do internally is the podcast is like the hub of my personal brand wheel. And so we'll use the podcast to then from there make social content or LinkedIn articles. So it really also becomes this really beautiful, efficient, orchestrated personal branding endeavor where now we're distributing content but the podcast is kind of at the heart of it all too. So now my stuff doesn't feel like, sporadic throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. And that's always been a lot of fun as well.
Yeah. It's been good for me. It's been good for me that way too. Like it's just a forced way to make sure that I'm doing regular content
You're
stuff,
making content.
Regularly getting out in front of people, regularly doing stuff. It's been very good for that.
I mean, with AI, you have Cast Magic, you have Get Munch, there's so many different AI platforms that can take this long form content and then, like snip, and now you have bazillions of pieces of content. So if you're trying to like have a frequency, because the more you post, the more visibility you get. That's just how it works with the algorithms. Then also that's another really beautiful way as well.
So cool.
Yeah. Anyways, April, thank you so much for being on today's Rainmaker podcast. Where can people hang out with you?
My website is aprildunford.com. So that's a good place to start. I'm hanging out on social media less than I used to. LinkedIn is kind of the only place where I'm actually making some kind of an effort. It's a pretty minimal effort, to be honest. I started a newsletter and I'm really enjoying writing a newsletter. So I'm on Substack, but if you go to my website, you can find it. That's probably the best place to start. And then I have this podcast that I've been fooling around with. I just finished season 1. I'm taking a few weeks off over the holiday break to think about people I want to have on season 2. So season 2 will come in January. So yeah, those are the best ways to find me.
Amazing. Well, you're a gem. This conversation was money, like literal money. And so I am just in awe of you. I don't know if I ever told you, I actually watched you speak a couple of years ago.
Did you?
Yes. And I was
speaking. This is how everybody finds me.
That's how I know you.
Where was this?
I want to say it was Boston, but I could be wrong.
Was it a marketing conference?
Yes.
I'm trying to think. Boston marketing conference, marketing profs, B2B marketing summit.
I can't remember. I feel
inbound, maybe.
I flew. Yep. I feel like I flew up north and I saw you speak and I was like, damn, she's smart.
Oh, it's working.
It's working. So I just have to, I don't know if I even told you before we push record that yes, I'm a big fan.
Oh, that's cool.
And I've been a fan for a while. So this is like dual exciting for me to have this podcast with you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, well, we'll finish it off here. So thank you so much for being on today's Rainmaker podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Thank you for joining us on today's Rainmaker podcast. Marketers help other marketers. So if there's a marketer in your life who could really use a new perspective in a way that helps them advance their career, please pass this episode forward, share, leave us a review. Everything helps as we embark on helping as many marketers elevate themselves inside and out. You can always visit veronicarami.com for today's show notes, additional links to some free resources and tools for you to help you advance your career. You can always connect with us on social media at @ViaRami if you want more behind the scenes or a way for us to connect personally. Until next time, my friends, make it rain.